Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Work Comp Matters, the Mueller Report. It's normally at this time that I would tell you all the news stories of what's on the show in addition to the Mueller Report, but that is all superseded by the communique I got from Work Comp Central after the show. They have decided to renew the contract, and I am totally thrilled. Thanks a lot, WorkCompCentral.com. Now, here's the show.
Stand by SOT1.
Standing.
10 seconds. Ready, rollin'. Ready, SOT1.
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll in.
From the Roundtable at Uncle's Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and you independent contractors. My name is Steve Appel, and I'll be your host for the next hour with some talk, some news, and hopefully some answers about Work Comp Matters. Thanks for being part of the show. And if you can break away from your Work Comp Matters, feel free to give us a call and clue us in with your questions, comments, and or concerns. The phone number worldwide, 818-357-4120. Send me an email to wcexaminer@aol.com. Heck, you can be old school. Send me a fax, damn it, 818-475-1437. With me in studio, my right-hand man, Dr. Michael Zima, my protege, attorney Robert Ozeron. Scott Walton of legendary Uncle Studios is on the board. Back in Munich, Germany, retired attorney John Scalia. And back at Work Comp Central, making sure the whole thing goes right, is Ms. Kristen Chavez. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. Yeah, the show is the Mueller Report, and we're going to get to the Mueller Report in a little bit. I haven't said it for a while. But about 2.5, 3 years ago, I think 2006, I had a handshake agreement with Work Comp Central to do 52 podcasts in 52 weeks, and I think we did 51. We renewed the contract, and then in 2018, we did another 51 podcasts in 52 weeks. And here we are in 2019. At the start of the year, we renewed the contract for 1 quarter. This show finalizes the quarter. I put out a communique to Work Comp Central to see if they want to renew the contract, and I haven't gotten an answer yet. So I sincerely hope they decide to renew us for the second quarter of 2019. I believe it's been a good symbiotic relationship. I know it's been beneficial to me. I certainly hope it's been beneficial to them. I know that the story that we did on Bruce Fishman, oh my God, that exploded. And certainly people are interested in stuff that they're interested in hearing. But the ball is in the court of Work Comp Central, and hopefully I find out by the next show whether or not they want to renew the contract. Either way, Work Comp Central has always been very good to me. They've been honorable to me. And if they decide for whatever reason they do not want to renew the contract, I'm sure that that is probably the decision that is best for that corporation. And hey, you know, they may come back later and say, we changed our mind. But then again, you know, maybe they'll renew. But for those of you that are interested, if you want to continue hearing us on Work Comp Central, please feel free. Give them a call, workcompcentral.com, or email them, text them, whatever. That is the number one location for workers' compensation, both in the state of California as well as the United States. If you want your blogging, your credits, your education, MCLEs, CEs, you can also get 7 days completely free, no obligation, or pick up a year's subscription at literally $1 a day. That's workcompcentral.com. I use them, and hey, You should too. We're also brought to you by A1 Law. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other system in the damn Kuiper Belt, give a call to 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee. $1 a day, A1 Law. And last but not least, Work Comp Matters is sponsored by Santa Monica Tickets. If you want the best location for your concert, sports, theater tickets, front row, sold out, heck, it doesn't matter. Give our buddy Brian a call at Santa Monica Tickets, 310-395-8587. Well, stories tonight, including a Work Comp Central story. We, of course, have the Mueller Report. We've got monkey business in the Jussie Smollett case. We also have monkey business at the Department of Industrial Relations, and that involves Christine Baker. That's also a Work Comp Central story, and we're going to be talking about that shortly. Monkey business again. I should have titled the show "Monkey Business."
I was thinking about that.
No. The Mueller Report.
That phrase kept coming up.
Yeah, monkey business at the DMV. That story is out today regarding your ID cards. We've got expansion of the ban on smoking in Los Angeles County involving vapes. And Robert, I know that we spoke last week about the vaping. And, we got a story on it. Fentanyl is in the news. And last but not least, the Obamacare Act, the Affordable Care Act, is in the news. Now, normally, it's at this time that I would take 5 or 10 minutes out and talk about my take on Mueller. But instead, I'm going to go to my right-hand man. He is my chief of staff. He keeps me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time. With the first news story talking about the Mueller Report is Dr. Michael Zima. And Mike, you're welcome.
Thank you. According to Attorney General William Barr's summary, Special Counsel Robert Mueller's long-awaited report concludes President Donald Trump and his campaign did not collude with Russia in the 2016 election, but reaches no conclusion on whether he obstructed justice. In a letter on Sunday to Congress summarizing the findings in the Mueller report, Barr stated the following regarding obstruction of justice, quote, "While this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him."
I could have told you exactly the same thing a year ago or whatever. And I want to talk about the report and the reaction in just a moment. But it has become clear to me, based on the reaction of this report, I think this is the current state of politics, and it drastically changed when Donald Trump became president. Since day one of his presidency, the Democrats have been trying to do anything, and I mean anything, to impeach him. And, of course, Pelosi, won't do it because it's just the evidence ain't there, folks. Okay? I see the opposition, the Democrats, every single day from now until the end of the 2 years. And if he gets reelected, which, by the way, based on the candidates we have now, he will, I see them trying to impeach him until for the next 6 years. And maybe that is where the presidency is going. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, we're going to have the other side trying to kick him out of office as soon as day one he is elected. People constantly talk about the popular vote. If I'm not mistaken, the last Republican that was elected president that won the popular vote was Ronald Reagan. I know Ronald Reagan did, but I doubt that either of the Bushes did. I think, generally speaking, except for Reagan.
I think Bush the Elder did. Bush the Elder.
But most of the time, the Dems will get the popular vote. But, folks, that's not the way our system is set up, okay? If you don't like the Electoral College, go ahead and change the Constitution of the United States.
Well, they want to get rid of it.
Let them go ahead and do it.
Okay? If you live in rural Nevada, nobody's going to come and campaign at you.
I am sick and tired of the conspiracy theorists that are talking all this mumbo jumbo. To me, it's a bunch of crap. I got to tell you. And, before we talk about Mueller, let's talk about Mueller for just a second. Basically, he was on the case for 22 months. Don't know exactly, but he billed out somewhere between $20 and $40 million. Now, I don't know what his hourly rate is, okay? But if you figure it's $500 an hour for $20 million bucks, that's 50,000 billable hours, okay? You got 500 witnesses. You got 2,800 subpoenas. I was asking Mike earlier. He thinks the actual report is somewhere between 400 and 600
pages. What I've heard,
pages.
been able to piece together 400 to 800 pages. And I heard that the figure was $35 million bucks for the investigation. But, of course, all that dough's not going into his pocket, Mueller's pocket. And I wonder, Robert, does he just take a per diem, or what does he do? He's a public servant in that regard. Is he billing $500 an hour?
He's got costs and fees, and that's number one. But go ahead, my boy.
Okay, I think it lists here on the internet that he's working for the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice document lists the top 13 attorneys working on the Mueller probe and their salaries, which range from $105,000 to $187,000. So those salaries total slightly more than $2 million per year, with an average of nearly $160,000 per year.
You're telling Robert Mueller, who was head of the FBI for 15 years, is only on salary for about $180,000 a year? That's it?
I think that's what government jobs pay, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Well, I thought he was special counsel.
Well, they have a lot of authority.
Okay.
But their take-home pay, I mean, what do you want them to all be? They are all millionaires privately, and who knows how they
I
are.
would think so. Okay.
I never understood how they are if they've been working like that, but who knows?
I guess speaking engagements.
So I heard $35 million for the whole investigation.
So that's the cost out of the taxpayers' funds,
Right.
right? But it's spread across the whole country. That's not a
That's not an outrageous amount.
The first
If
reaction
it was a private law firm, it'd be 10 times that. Sorry.
is what? No, that's okay. Is Mueller turns over the report to Attorney General Barr. Attorney General Barr somehow digests it within 24 to 48 hours, or he simply looks at the final conclusions.
Probably skims it and looks at the final conclusions.
And says essentially that there is no collusion, although I cannot come to a conclusion one way or the other on obstruction of justice. Is that essentially it?
Yeah, which is kind of weird because he's the special prosecutor. His job is to say to charge or not charge.
No, his job was to determine if there was collusion. They did not ask him to give a report on obstruction of justice.
I think obstruction of justice would be a sham charge, based on a sham allegation, to thereafter be accused of obstructing justice. It would be just too much. I think that's probably it. If the predicate crime doesn't exist, obstructing justice, I don't know if that'd be appropriate. I don't know if it technically even could be charged. Perhaps it could be. It's an investigation, after all, that's official. It could be totally separate from the obstruction charge. But I'd still think in such an investigation, it would be so inappropriate to claim foul on the person being investigated based on bogus charges. That would be, I didn't comply nice enough. It's like you didn't bend over and take it quicker. It's just not an appropriate thing to do.
Now, something that Mike and I were talking about earlier. I'm sorry, Mike. Mike said something to me that blew me away, because in the 22 months, I never once thought about it. Mike says to me today, there were no leaks. And that's absolutely true. During the 22 months, you never heard jack about what they had or what was going on.
That's extraordinary.
Not a peep. And that is
you
a
heard
tribute.
a lot of things.
That is a
Like
tribute.
what?
No, you didn't.
Sure, you saw it on the news all the time. There was always a breaking, like a bombshell that they're talking
That
about.
had to do with they discovered in the investigation?
Well, allegedly discovered. It's always this innuendo.
Well, I mean, there was some public stuff going on, some trials and such that resulted.
Man, there was a media firestorm around this investigation. They're always saying what apparently happened and what they know.
I'd say
and apparently all that was just fake.
In my Fake news. Thank you. I want to talk for a moment about Robert Mueller. Firstly, dude is a war hero. Got shot in the thigh. He's educated, I think, at Harvard. As I said earlier, he was the head of the FBI for 15 years. And in my mind, the dude has total 100% credibility as far as a legal mind and an investigator. Dude's stud, okay?
Well,
That's all I have to say about that.
I heard a contrary view
Tell
today.
me.
I think the gist of it was that when he was at the FBI, he and a couple of other folks engaged in some monkey business prosecutions, and there was nothing more than that.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Doctor. Anyways, going back.
Also, a lot of times people get by on their reputation, and and you know,
perception is reality.
Well, perhaps, but in a combat arena, sometimes if you're rusty, it's really bad. Okay, I'm just going to put it that way.
And I appreciate that. So, the 4-page report comes out by Barr, and immediately all of the Democrats say, we want to see the report, we want to receive the report. There's got to be evidence in there. If it's not collusion, it's obstruction of blah, blah, blah.
Republicans did also, unanimously.
I think the whole Congress voted
424
unanimously to release the entire report. But I want to talk to you for a moment about conclusions and or collusion. And I do not normally spread conspiracy theories. Thank you. I'm so sorry. And it's because I don't normally do it that I can't normally pronounce it.
We'd have higher viewership if you did, or listenership. I'll just tell you. People love that stuff.
Here's a theory from the other side of the coin. I just thought I would throw it out there. Again, this is collusion, a theory. The Democratic National Committee rigs the Democratic primary election against Bernie Sanders by Donna Brazile giving Hillary Clinton the questions in advance to the Democratic National Committee debate. Now, is that fake news or is that true? Did that really happen?
Supposedly, the Reaps are now going to go after stuff like that.
I just want to know if it's really true.
Yes, and
Thank
it was
you.
reported at the time. Yes, I believe that's true.
The Obama administration starts to request surveillance on Donald Trump, his family, his transition team, and anyone associated with him. Is that true, or is that fake news?
The time is in question, but yes, I think before the election they did.
The Democratic National Committee, on behalf of Hillary Clinton, then pays Christopher Steele to come up with a smear dossier.
The Steele dossier.
About Trump, which is then turned over to the FBI for the FISA warrants. Is that true, or is that fake news?
My understanding is that the Steele dossier.
True.
Well, the Steele dossier.
Who was the head of the FBI at that time?
Was it Mueller?
No, I believe it was Comey, wasn't it?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Comey.
It was Comey, because Mueller resigned or left the FBI after 15 years in 2013.
Regarding those FISA warrants, I think there was a lot of assertions made in the warrant
based
requests,
on the Steele dossier.
but they didn't tell the judge at the time.
That's correct.
Where these sources were. They made make believe sources as as a citation.
Now I think
renewed a number of times.
I think some of that news, and I know I saw this on a couple of news reports, had Donald Trump in a foreign country with in bed naked with prostitutes urinating on him, right?
Yes, that was in the Steele dossier.
And you know what? I just want to say, well, let me finish this. And then last but not least, of course, Trump wins the general election. And then President Obama, at the time during his lame duck presidency, orders the investigation into Russian collusion in our elections and changes a pre-existing executive order. You may want to write this down, folks, because it's been in existence, I think, since the early 70s. Executive order 12333. That's 1233, which basically allows more surveillance data on the United States citizens, but it was done specifically for Donald Trump. Now, forget about the done specifically for Donald Trump, but is it true or is it fake news that President Obama in about 2017 changed Executive Order 12333?
I don't know about that.
No, I'm telling you it's true.
Okay.
I'm telling you it's true. Anyways, that's the other side collusion conspiracy theory, whether or not you want to believe it or not. As I said earlier, I think the presidency of the United States has changed drastically. And I think social media has a hell of a lot to do with this. I have never in my lifetime seen a president from day one face the scrutiny and the attempts to get him recalled, impeached, whatever the case
sometimes he
may
doesn't.
be.
He doesn't do very well with it. Because of his mouth.
I think politically, my opinion, Trump's one of the worst presidents we've ever had. However, I don't know any other president that has ever faced this type of scrutiny.
You really think that?
Which part?
Well, the worst president. I know it's
No. I
catch-all.
said politically.
Oh, politically.
I think I said at the start of the show that
okay.
if the election were held today to pick a new president, or 2 years from now, if all the Dems have to offer what they have to offer now, I would vote for Trump. I've said on the show many times before.
I agree with that.
I did not vote for Trump. I voted for the libertarian candidate, whatever his or her name is. But I am happy from a business point of view how the country is running. Yeah, I know you can pick and choose this and whatever, but I'm looking at the price of gas, I'm looking at the price of milk, I'm looking
Stock
at the
market's
price
up,
of
right?
goods, the stock market is up, blah, 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 blah. What I find, the word that comes to mind is fascinating, but really ridiculous, is that the whole basis of the collusion theory has to do with the Russians running BS Facebook ads. And we know that in strategizing, Hillary chose not to run any social media ads. All of hers were on radio and TV. The Trump campaign, in addition to radio and TV, chose to engage in social media ads. I happen to know a little bit about this.
They were
folks.
U.S.-based, though, companies that they were dealing with and people.
I
Not the
know
Riskies.
this. No Facebook ad. And we've talked about where people get their news. And unfortunately, a huge majority of the population these days gets their news by social media and or Facebook ads. I've got 12 different news sources, folks. And let me tell you, if I see something on Facebook, I first take a look at where it's coming from, and then I verify it. But that is just me, okay? And anybody who thinks that their vote is going to change for the President of the United States based on a Facebook ad, well, you know what? I saw ads in news stories where Hillary was supposedly the head of a child prostitution organization running out of the back of a pizza parlor. You think I believe that? I believe that as much as I did the prostitutes urinating on Trump. I think the whole collusion thing...
So you sort of believe it?
I don't believe it at all, my boy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure what you meant by that analogy.
No. What I mean is I think it's a bunch of crap.
Oh.
What I mean is that if you are... Let me say this. I do not base my opinion on who to vote for based on Facebook ads that I see. And if the best that they can offer, the Democrats, can offer is that there was collusion... Look, even if it's true, which it's not, I don't think it swayed the election. And I guess that is my bottom line. a bunch of Facebook ads that cost less than $1 million really change the election? Yeah, I don't think so.
Just looking for an excuse, right? Any excuse of why it didn't go right.
I think I agree.
60 Minutes had an extensive interview a couple months back with the guy that was the architect of the Trump, the internet thing. And he's totally an American, and he was just using all American stuff. And the Ruskies did their stuff completely separate from him, but he was like an internet genius.
Scott, what's our time? It's 25. All right. You know what? I think I've labored on this probably about 5 minutes too long. But in regards to the Mueller report, I think Robert Mueller is beyond reproach. Obviously, I haven't seen the report. I wish I could simply say, guys, you had your chance and you blew it. But unfortunately, I think this is where the state of the presidency of the United States is going to continue into the future, long after Trump is done with office. I think we're looking at the opposing side from day one, trying to get him out any way they can. And you know what, folks? I don't like it. My name is Steve Appel. You're listening to Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by theworkcompcentral.com. If you want the #1 location for workers' compensation, both in California as well as the United States, blogging, education, official credits, check out workcompcentral.com. They've got a free 7-day offer, no obligation. Plus, you can pick up a subscription for $1 a day. Speaking of $1 a day, we're also brought to you by A1 Law. If you want the #1 computer management system used by more workers' compensation attorneys than any other system in the damn Kuiper Belt, give a call to 818-357-4120 for your no-strings-attached money-back guarantee, $1 a day, A1 Law. He's a regular contributor to the show. He's a 45-year retired workers' compensation attorney. He's hanging out in Munich, Germany, and he is a true socialist. And here's his take of the week.
Hi, this is John with the weekly report from across the pond. I want to begin with my usual Trump takes. Robert Mueller concluded that there was no evidence of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, so score 1 for Trump. Of course, in the same report, Mueller also said this does not exonerate President Trump. Once again, proving that he cannot read, Trump went around saying, "I'm exonerated." Well, no, you're not exonerated. There's just no collusion. And this will, fortunately for him, distract attention from the fact that America had the greatest trade deficit in its history in the last month. Enough for that. As I said before, I'm going to focus some of my attention on this side of the pond because we've got some really interesting stuff going on here. The most interesting thing right now is Brexit, the decision of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. Brexit has been a complete and unmitigated disaster for Britain. Britain has forgotten that it's an island, that it's not one of the world's most important countries, even though it is important, and that its economy was very much tied to being in the European Union. It ignored all those facts and voted to leave. They didn't, of course, know what they were doing. In fact, that was proven by the fact that after they had voted to leave, the #1 Googled question in Britain was, what is the European Union? Nice to vote to leave before you know what it is. To show that that was a completely insane decision, the British government itself has estimated that now, some 2.5 years after the vote, approximately $1 trillion has left England, Britain, United Kingdom, whatever you want to call it, and gone to Europe. Why? Well, because Britain had a sweetheart deal with the European Union. Even though Britain does not use the euro, as we call it, or the euro, as you call it, they were allowed to pretend that they did. So the British pound was just as tradable in Europe as the euro. They were part of what we call the single market. This had tremendous advantages for London because London became a finance center for England and the European Union. And a lot of those financial institutions are American. So it was very convenient to establish offices in London because, obviously, the language is English, and you could pretend that you were in Europe since Britain had this sweetheart deal. Well, Britain no longer has that sweetheart deal. And as I said, already $1 trillion in pounds has exited and gone to the European continent because people are not sure of what kind of arrangement Britain is going to have with Europe in the future. There are 3 dates to keep in mind here. The first was the original date on which Britain was supposed to leave the European Union. That was March 29th. Well, Theresa May negotiated a deal with the European Union, but she couldn't get it past Parliament. It's been rejected twice by overwhelming numbers. So it was clear that on March 29th, either England would leave with no deal or they needed an extension of time. Since everybody concluded that no deal would be a catastrophe, the Brits went to Brussels and asked for an extension. Theresa May originally wanted the extension to be at the end of June. The European Union said, Theresa, you may have forgotten, but there's European parliamentary elections in May 25th. I'll be voting in them. And since Britain doesn't want to be part of the European Union, you cannot be expected to have elections for the European Parliament. Therefore, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you 2 dates. We're going to give you the first date of April 12th, which is the date on which you can come back to us and tell us what Parliament will accept as a deal, and that if they will accept it, or have accepted it, have actually passed it, then we will give you a temporary technical extension until May 22nd, so that you can pass all the laws you need to pass in Britain to accommodate the New Deal. Well, it looks unlikely that any of that's going to happen. For one thing, Theresa May managed to irritate everybody in Parliament by blaming them. When she came back, she today gave a speech saying that, it's either my deal or the Parliament will get to vote on what are called indicative votes, what you may like, but it's not binding. In other words, the same log jam that's been going on forever is likely to continue, and likely that Britain may well end up leaving with no deal. Why is that such a catastrophe? Let me give you a brief example. Britain's an island, a fact they seem to have conveniently forgotten. When you're an island, you depend on people to send goods and services your way. For example, every day, 300 tractor trailers go from the Dutch port of Rotterdam over to England, because both Holland and England are in the European Union. It's seamless. They drive into the port of Rotterdam, they get on a ferry boat, and they debark in London, and they drive freely into England. Well, that's only possible because England's a member of the European Union. 300 tractor trailers a day, and that's just one instance. The Dutch, of course, being sensible, have already hired an additional 700 people in case no deal happens. As far as I know, the Brits haven't done anything. So there's going to be a traffic jam miles long. Well, it's going to be a parking lot jam miles long of trucks waiting to get into Britain. And a number of them are going to be carrying produce. So by the time they get in, the produce may be spoiled and useless. Nice to forget you're an island. Anyway, it's pretty exciting here on this side of the pond. That's what's happening. That's the report this week.
John, you are an island to yourself. You are truly a madman across the water. My name is Steve Appel. You're dialed into WorkComp Matters. We'll be right back with the WorkCompCentral.com story after the musical break.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? Now that you know who you are, what do you want to be? And have you traveled very far? Far as the eye can see. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? How often have you been there? Often enough to know. What did you see when you were there? Nothing that doesn't show. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. to play. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. You keep all your money in a big brown bag inside a zoo. What a thing to do. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people?
Glenn Laughlin and the Cherry Blue Storms with Baby You're a Rich Man. My name is Steve Appel. You're dialed in to Work Comp Matters. We are brought to you by WorkCompCentral.com. If you want the number location for workers' compensation in California and the United States, check out WorkCompCentral.com. They're offering a free 7-day, no obligation, full subscription for 7 days, no charge, and you can pick up their services for $1 a day. I have it, and you should too. And one of the stories that came out yesterday by our buddy Greg Jones, actually it may have come out today, has to do with Christine Baker and monkey business at the Department of Industrial Relations. He's my protege. He's been in workers' compensation for about 6 years now. He's applicant attorney extraordinaire Robert Ozeron.
From the Sacramento Bee, after nearly a year of delay, California State Auditor Elaine Howe released details of her investigation into charges of nepotism at the Department of Industrial Relations. The investigation reviews over 1 million emails and interviews with dozens of witnesses, including 20 who, quote, feared retaliation, close quote. The auditor uncovered mounds of evidence to support nepotism claims against DIR's former director. She also discovered that the former director worked to undermine the auditor's investigation, apparently with help from a high-ranking official in Governor Jerry Brown's administration, according to the auditor's report. Howe wrote that the director seemed intent on identifying whistleblowers, but fails to name the department or the director at the center of the report. However, the timeline of events described in the audit point directly to former Industrial Relations Director Christine Baker, according to the Bee.
Okay, so let's get it straight. We don't have actual 100% verified news that it is the Department of Industrial Relations and it is Christine Baker. However, according to the Sacramento Bee, it is the Department of Industrial Relations and it is Christine Baker. And I'm going to tell you right now.
Pretty good. Sacramento Bee is pretty.
Sacramento Bee right now is my number one news source, and I get it online. I mean, I remember. I was speaking to someone today. I mean, I remember 25, 30 years ago, I used to get the L.A. Times rag delivered to my house, and there was nothing better on a Sunday. I would get 3 inches of, half of it would be advertising, but opening up the sports section, the Metro section, the editorial section, the calendar section, it was a beautiful thing. Now, no. Sacramento Bee. So if the Sacramento Bee is right, Christine Baker's USC, I think.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, are you saying that facetiously, or did she really go to USC, or she's an example of the type of monkey business?
I didn't mean the University of California. I mean she's up some Shiite creek.
Ah, I see.
She is USC.
And then, Governor Brown, just before he termed out, he appointed her to the Fraud Bureau.
To the head of the Fraud Bureau, where she gets, quote, a $100 stipend, close quote. I don't know what that means. I don't know what a $100 stipend means. I mean, per day?
I think when they sit, and I don't know how often they sit, when they sit, she'll get $100 a day.
Yeah.
And this is for jobs at the DIR? That's it? As far as the benefits conveyed on a nepotism basis?
While she was in office, there was an issue, and we reported it on Work Comp Matters last year, that supposedly she hired, again, according to the Sacramento Bee, I do not know this for a fact. I'm basing this on news information that I have read. Okay?
Well, the Sacramento Bee seems to be pretty poignant in their...
She got her daughter a job for the Department of Industrial Relations, and arguably her daughter did not meet the minimum qualifications. Her daughter was then reprimanded for not doing performing the function up to standards, and then at least 20 people reported to superiors that they felt threatened by Christine Baker, and they were afraid that Christine Baker would retaliate against them if they, quote, blew the whistle, close quote, on the daughter. You may or may not recall that it was shortly thereafter that Christine Baker immediately retired, okay? And at the time she retired, it was not announced why. It was sudden. Nobody understood. The allegations in the Sacramento Bee, again, I'm not saying I know this for a fact, this is what's reported in the Sacramento Bee, is because she retired under pressure that the allegations would eventually be found to be true. Then, just as Governor Brown was leaving office in his last days, and I mean like the last 72 hours, he appointed her to the head of a fraud committee.
That is insanity. Am I going crazy?
How much does this job pay that the daughter got?
It was probably an entry level to better than entry level job.
You know, I'm
probably.
gonna guess 30, 40 grand, maybe 50 tops.
It's a big story.
Well, it's in the Sacramento Bee, and it's in WorkCompCentral.com, okay? Our buddy Greg Jones, he wrote that story. It came
And the daughter
out
didn't
also
perform
in
her
the
duties
Sacramento
adequately?
Bee.
Correct. That's in the record.
The word is she was not qualified to do the job and did not do the job properly.
I wonder what you can say about the rest of the employees there.
Well, we have a story on the DMV tonight. In fact, you know what, Robert? How about if we go to Mike right now? We've got a story on the California Department of Motor Vehicles that's somewhat just like that. Sir, doctor,
Yes, yeah,
take it away.
You know, it is monkey business night, because we just did the monkey business at the DIA, and we got one about monkey business in the Smollett
That's
case.
DIR, Department of Industrial
What did I
Relations.
say?
You said DIA, but go
Oh,
ahead.
my gosh. Now we got monkey business at the DMV. California's Department of Motor Vehicles has, quote, significant deficiencies, end quote, and quote, outdated, end quote, organizational structure that set conditions for poor customer service and the failed implementation of a new ID program, according to an audit released today. After months of investigating, the Department of Finance determined the DMV was ill-prepared to implement Real ID, a federally mandated program requiring folks to get special ID cards to board airplanes or enter federal facilities without a passport. That project, quote, was not recognized as a priority until 2017, end quote, a year before the program's January 2018 launch, the audit said. Congress passed the law requiring states...
2005.
Yeah, they passed the law requiring states to create real IDs in 2005, so they essentially waited 12 years. About 20 million Californians are expected to come in for the new ID cards by 2023. Good luck, folks.
Yep.
The problem
I don't
goes
have
into
my new ID card.
problem
Go
goes
ahead.
into effect October 1, 2020, and I don't have my new ID card yet.
And
either.
I have flown.
They waited 12 years before they addressed this problem in earnest.
Well, we've spoken before on Work Comp Matters about the DMV. What do you guys think about the 737 airplanes? Oh, my goodness.
They were too cozy with the FAA safety guys.
Well, they installed this new autopilot switch or autopilot sensor that they did not, allegedly they did not educate their pilots or all of the pilots on how to use it.
That's true.
Well,
Insufficient training.
Did you also hear that a 737, this is in the past 24 hours, that was leaving Atlanta, Georgia,
But it had nothing to do with this problem.
it was leaving Atlanta, Georgia to go into the West Coast, and it had an engine problem. It
Right.
had nothing to do with the sensor problem, right?
correct, but I heard that too. Bad time for a coincidence, no doubt, but that's a coincidence perhaps. The sensor issue, I know that in America we haven't had any issues with that, correct? As far as we know?
Correct, because they know how to deal with the software.
The pilots know how to deal with the software, right?
And the training required for the American pilots is much higher, right?
Right.
Many more hours.
Good point.
Yes.
Good point.
Many
yes.
more flight hours.
I think the pilots of the recent crashed airlines had 2.5 hours each training on the airplane.
No, well, it's flight. Oh, maybe that much training, but as far as actual hours in
I'm
the
not
air,
talking hours.
only
talking training.
200 hours in the
Yeah,
air. Which
200
is nothing.
hours in the air and 2.5 hours
I
training.
I mean, on this plane,
Yeah.
with this plane.
Okay. Well, I wonder how many actual flight hours they had as well. That'd
Mike's
be
saying about
important as well.
200.
200. Well,
200.
one
Well,
of the
on this
co-pilots.
plane, but perhaps total as well under their belt.
No. I don't think it's this exact plane, Robert. I think it's the model plane. They had 200 hours.
I understand.
Okay.
But I'm talking in total as well. How experienced is the pilot overall, and then how
Overall, okay.
and then how experienced are they on this aircraft, right? So you have two questions there about their experience, and I think the American pilots are probably perhaps greater in both total experience and experience with a specific aircraft.
My understanding is that when they put the 737 MAX right together, they had to move something and they had to alter something and they had to put the engines closer to the fuselage.
Really?
And yes, and when they did that, they had sometimes a stability problem with it wanting to go up and wanting to go down. So they put this stuff in there, and working correctly, apparently, it can alleviate the problem if you're in the air and it does that. But I think the problem in the first crash was that it just started doing it on its own based on the software. And all they had to do was just flip it off and they would have stabilized. But they didn't know that. Which
That's
is
what I
nuts.
hear. It takes two. They had to flip two switches, is what I heard.
And it ended up killing everybody, huh?
Yes.
Times two.
Shoo. Just straight down into the ground.
Well, that's bad luck, I guess.
Well, speaking of bad luck, we don't normally talk about the state of Illinois and definitely about the city of Chicago, but we've got a story on Jussie Smollett, and maybe we've mentioned him once on Word Count Matters, but regardless, we've got a story on Jussie Smollett. That is entitled Monkey Business in Smollett Case, number 2.
Yes. Cook County prosecutors maintain that they stand behind the police investigation that found Jussie Smollett paid two brothers, Abel and Ola Ozdondario, $3,500 each to stage an attack that made it look like the actor was the victim of a brutal assault by a homophobic, racist assailants. The decision to drop the charges was simply, quote, just disposition and appropriate resolution to the case, prosecutors said. Legal experts say it's hardly unusual for prosecutors to agree to seal court records for someone with Smollett's limited criminal history. Smollett pleaded no contest in 2008 to a charge of giving police false information following a DUI arrest in L.A. Illinois State Attorney Kim Fox, who was at one time assigned to the case, had taken herself off the case and disclosed she traded messages about the matter with Tina Tetchen, a high-profile Chicago attorney who previously served as former First Lady Michelle Obama's chief of staff.
I think it's Tina Chen.
First off, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Lou Shapiro. He was on Fox Channel 11 News, that's Southern California, last night at around 5:30, and he was talking about the Smollett case, and he also mentioned the Obama factor in the case. My understanding from what I've read is that Michelle Obama is involved one way or the other and had something to do with the settlement in this case. And folks, whoever's telling you it's not a settlement, please, it's a settlement, okay? And whether or not it's on paper or not, in my opinion, and you can quote me, in my opinion, Michelle Obama is involved in this somehow, some way. Guys, what do you think?
Tina Chen is, well, I checked her resume. It's really rather extraordinary. She was a partner for 13 years at Skadden Arps, if I read it correctly. But she was Michelle Obama's chief of staff when Michelle Obama was First Lady, the last couple of years at least, okay? So she's a Chicago attorney, and she's, high profile, and I even heard you talk about conspiracy theories. I even heard that the situation went as far as Tina Chen volunteered to throw herself in front of the bus, as it were, to keep Michelle Obama's name clean. That's what I heard. Now, this is not a really reliable
Then,
source.
of course, there is the fact that there was influence to try and throw the investigation to the FBI, take it out of the local hands.
Steve, and that's one thing I don't understand. Why would those folks, those Smollett folks, want it to go to the FBI other than they had an in there, or the Obamas had an in
Local
there?
police departments, local investigators always want to keep the case within their jurisdiction if they're legally able to. They never want to release it to a larger jurisdiction. So then you have to ask yourself, like Mike said, why?
And there has to be that they felt they had a connection. Now, there was just one other thing that slapped me in the face as I was looking at stuff today.
I wanted to slap you in the face today.
Tina Chen is a childhood friend of Rahm Emanuel's wife, Amy Rule.
And for those of you that don't know, Rahm Emanuel was President Barack Obama's chief of staff at the White House. He either was or is the mayor of Chicago. And
Current mayor of Chicago, been for like the last 6 years. The first 2 years of the Obama administration, he was Obama's chief of staff. Now, the weird thing about that, boys and girls, at least to me, is that yesterday or the day before, Monday or Tuesday, Rahm Emanuel had a news conference with the Chicago chief of police, and Rahm Emanuel just assailed this decision. But no more conspiracy.
You don't believe he was really angry, just putting on a little show?
Let me tell you, I think that he probably knew about what was going to happen, because his wife, Amy Rule, knew, because Tina Chen probably told him.
Maybe he played a part in it happening.
Even that. This is Chicago. This is the word that kept coming up today. Chicago. This is what they do in Chicago.
Politics. This is the way Chicago runs. Back from the Depression. What's his name again? Al Capone. Chicago politics. Scott, what's our time? 51. All right, we got more time. Robert, if I could impress upon you to read another news story, pick one and go for it. And while Robert's doing that, my name is Steve Appel. You're listening to Work Comp Matters. We're brought to you by WorkCompCentral.com. If you want the #1 location for workers' compensation, both in California as well as the United States, blogging, credits, education, the whole ball of wax, check out WorkCompCentral.com. You can pick up a free 7-day subscription, no obligation, or you can purchase it for literally $1 a day. And we also, of course, have A1 Law. Robert looks like he's ready, so take it away, my boy.
Expansion of smoking ban on property of LA County.
Oh, I want to hear this. Please continue.
The LA Board of Supervisors updated the county's legal definition of smoke and smoking on Tuesday, expanding an existing ban on using tobacco products at beaches, parks, and government buildings to include electronic cigarettes and pot. The supervisors also clamped down with new restrictions on smoking at beach parking lots, bus stops, outdoor bars, and common areas of county-owned golf courses and unincorporated areas.
Well, we know the People's Republic of Santa Monica was one of the heading factors. Come on. I mean, in addition to not being able to smoke on beaches, talk about rent control, talk about being liberal democratic, liberal socialist, liberal. The People's Republic is Santa Monica is just
democratic
out there,
socialist.
Man. But I think the key here now, and I've been advocating this ever since e-cigarettes first came out, is you may say it's vapor, but it's smoke. Okay, you're taking a concentrated liquid with multiple chemicals, you're heating it up, you're breathing it in. And by the way, have you ever seen these people who vape, the amount of vape that comes out of their mouths? Oh my God.
I haven't. What is it, thick?
Oh, it's a cumulus nimbus cloud in its own.
Really? How come they don't cough?
I guess they build up a tolerance.
Well, that's pretty hardcore.
But what can I tell you? We've got another news story on Work Comp Matters, and Mike, you can read it.
Okay. Experts say the nation's deadliest drug, fentanyl, is increasingly coming in from Mexico through ports of entry like San Isidro. The synthetic drug is transported into San Diego mostly in vehicles and pedestrian lanes at the ports by U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents known as couriers, according to Sherry Walker Hobson of the U.S. Attorney's Office.
So if you're transporting drugs, they're known as couriers, but if you're bringing people illegally across the border, you're a coyote, right?
That sounds like that's the appropriate distinction in the terms.
What can I tell you? Robert, you probably got one news story left, and then we're going to end the show. I'm sure Scott's going to be happy with that. So
California, along with more than a dozen other states, has intervened in a court case to defend the Affordable Care Act. As important as that fight is, it'll take place against the backdrop of a much larger war in this country over the extent to which Americans want government support for health care. In 2020, the Democrats are betting that the country wants more support than what we have now. The Trump administration is betting, against all available evidence, that we want none at all. The final decision will be made by the voters, not by the courts.
That is awesome, and that basically brings us to the end of another edition of Work Comp Matters. I got to thank everybody who's contributed to the show in one way or another. My right-hand man keeping me in check and out of trouble at least 90% of the time, Dr. Michael Zyma. My protege, 6-year workers' compensation attorney, Robert Ozeron. Scott Walton from legendary Uncle's Studios, 45-year retired attorney in Munich, Germany, John Scalia. Santa Monica Tickets, A1 Law, and hopefully the continued support of all the good people back at WorkComp Central who continue to support and approve of this project, including, but not limited to, Ms. Kristen Chavez. My name is Steve Appel, and either way, we'll see you again next week for another edition of WorkComp Matters.